Welcome to this episode of Prairie People's Poetry, a spotlight series highlighting Saskatchewan spoken word artists through performances and conversation on the craft and community of the art form. I'm your host, Cat Abenstein, and today we're talking with spoken word poet Austin "The Noble Savage" Ahenakew.
My name is Austin Ahenakew, aka The Noble Savage, and I'm a spoken word poet.
So Austin, can you tell me a little bit about your spoken word? What sort of topics do you discuss in your poetry?
My poetry includes a lot of topics such as Native struggles and struggles that I've gone through in my own life, such as poverty in the city and issues on the reserve, and just issues with my own mental health and trying to make sure that everyone else doesn't feel the same as I do.
So do you find that poetry for you is therapeutic?
I can use my poetry as a form of therapy if I choose to, and I can also use it as a voice to empower change. In the beginning, I used it a lot for therapy, and it's kind of adapted into a little bit more of a social push as I've established a stronger voice.
So how long have you been writing poetry?
I have been writing poetry since about grade 3 when I started writing secretly, and then I made it public in grade 9 when I was brought to a poetry competition in the library. And that was the first time I ever read my poetry to anyone publicly.
So you said you wrote poetry secretly when you were younger. Why was it a secret?
I kept my poetry a secret mostly because of my friend group that I had, and that I started off as a love poet mostly in the beginning, and most of my poems were designated towards one person, so they didn't need to be public for other person's ears. And now that I've adapted into a stronger poet, I have been able to reach a wider audience.
I am weak. I am weak because while my people are sitting in jail for only saying no to the police, there are still some officers who know me by name, and it's not because I'm fighting for the peace. I am weak because even though my voice is my strongest virtue, I am still unable to speak. You successfully destroyed my own language, and now not even your words leak through my cheeks. I am weak because my idea of sticking to the man is blasting Wu-Tang Clan, shouting, "Bring the motherfucking ruckus," and I follow the instructions. Instead of doing anything productive to prevent these abductions, the preconceived assumptions and visitors on our native land pushing us into self-destruction. I am weak because the ground even now is being ripped and torn from beneath my people's feet. As if it doesn't say in our treaties that they will live on as long as the sun shines, the river flows, and the grass grows. But many people still don't even know the rhyme, and even I sometimes go to say it and choke. I am weak because I allowed myself to become everything my mother told me I shouldn't be. Because my girlfriend already knows I'd prefer to adopt, get a surrogate, or forget children completely to avoid my son failing just like me. I am weak because I hold a personal vendetta against all religion. Because something that was raped into my people is not where my heart and soul can be given. I hold an objection to something saving so many people matching my complexion from places like prison and addiction, helping them to find their tradition. Still, none of this can reposition my opinions. Amazing life stories fall on my ears that can never seem to listen to something that is helping this drowning world to build stronger bridges. I am weak because I do not believe that I'll be a strong enough parent to counteract the assimilating treatment that all my fellow Native people have been receiving. To teach my child to fight with peace when all I know how to do is use my fists. I am weak because I do not know how to coexist when I do not properly fit with my native side, and even less with the part of me that has been painted over white. I am weak. But the word I does not mean only me specifically. It signifies my people, the Inuit, Métis, and my fellow tribe, the Cree. Because I know I can't be the only brown man who feels guilty. claiming the word Aboriginal when my family was and is still struggling, living through an assimilating society, the same one that built me as if I wasn't meant to be proud to be Cree. I am weak, because you people made me a trespasser, as if this land is my body. Assimilation achieved.
So, what sorts of things do you do to help you become a stronger poet?
When I look to increase my ability as a poet, I look to find different perspectives on it through coaches and or fellow poets that I've met in my passing, such as Kevin Westquate and Cat Abenstein. I have drawn a lot of inspiration from, as well as just inspiration from social things that happen throughout the world.
So, where do you get inspiration for your work?
My inspiration draws a lot from things that I have experienced that have specifically drawn a little bit of trauma to me. So, being on the reserve, I experienced a lot of things that brought out my PTSD. And at that time, it was very hard for me, and that kind of triggered me to start writing a little bit more emotionally for myself, more so than to others. Mm-hmm. And then seeing the struggles on my reserve, as well as coming back to a city to see the struggles be nearly the same in the hardest parts of the city, kind of drew out a lot of force throughout my voice.
What does your writing process look like?
My writing process varies very much so depending on my own mental standing at the point. Because there's times when it can be very clinical and very page by page, step by step process, and then there's other times when I sit down at 3 a.m. in tears sometimes, or in a rage, and it all just blasts out on a page immediately. Some of my favorite pieces took a lot longer to write. Some of them were just splurges from a 3 a.m. time when I couldn't sleep at night.
Close your eyes and imagine beauty. Imagine nature's abundance, respected and clean. Everyone has full and happy lives to lead, and life is working perfectly. Imagine being free. Imagine an abusive relationship, which is actually what it was. That's not a metaphor or simile. That's everything beautiful suddenly turning ugly. That's being locked in your own home, destroying you mentally, while everyone's watching you, acting like it's still working perfectly. Now, imagine a beast. But not the kind of beast that falls in love with beauty, but the kind of beast that is killing children one by one secretly, and is only noticed when it kills dozens weekly. Still, it's brushed under the rug because their futures were bleak, or the ones who were killed were just too weak. But a person's a person, no matter how small. But the way I see it, they don't seem to matter at all. Because in the belly of the beast, there's at least 60% more illicit drug use. And heavy drinking goes up 35%. And that's only in the underage youth, too. But hey, I guess they have a way to escape. Snort this, inhale this, and inject that. And do it 12 times a day. If they run out of that, there's a kind of paint thinner in the back. Good thing this beast isn't in the city, because that whole place has gone to crap. All their women have either been raped or kidnapped, and all their children live by the quote, puff puff pass, then pass when given the chance, sit on Santa Claus's lap. They're fine though. Let's take away their money and supplies, ignore their cries, and remain blind to however more many people die. The beast is code for reserves, FYI. And it proves my point if it took me telling you to realize that there's a real problem right in our face. You just need to open your eyes. Because none of this would be happening if you could see what I'm seeing. If you could feel what I'm feeling. If your stomach twisted in knots like theirs do when they wash down a handful of pills with bleach. So imagine this beast. Imagine if he strolled into your city. Imagine if he killed all your children. raped and murdered your women, pushed everyone to alcohol and drug addiction, or 50% of homes have people being beaten. Would you still think these people aren't being mistreated? No matter what we do, there are always new stories, and this time it was Colton. I'm not saying there wasn't crime on both sides here, but there is a right to be revolting. Because if Canada wants to live up to its lie of a reputation, then there at least needs to be justice involvement. The way of Indigenous life has become learning to live with injustice, waiting for your mother or sister to come home and worrying, being blasted with water cannons for fighting for our land. This is not the way Indigenous life is supposed to be about. This is not the way I want to have to live. Having to be hesitant to live my life because one wrong move and it actually is my life. Drugs, rape, kidnapping, murder, and 11 times more self-caused deceased. As a country, how do you suppose we put this problem to peace? Now open your eyes.
Do you have a favorite poem that you've done?
My favorite poem, or at least a poem that has been recognized a lot by many people, is Reserved for the Beast, which was a poem that looked into the issues on a reserve, specifically my reserve. And I lived there for a few years, and when I came back, I noticed that there was a huge difference in just how everything was handled, even just in school, alone by itself. And this was an assignment for school, so I felt it was very prominent to bring up and discuss.
So with this poem, Reserved for the Beast, I know that at some point you made a big edit to it. Do you find that the older you get, the more often you reference social issues in your work as well?
As I grow as a poet, I reflect on the pieces that have had the most effect and have stood out the most to me throughout the times. And many pieces that tried to cause real change and stood out for social movements and stuff like that really stuck with me and stood the time, as opposed to other poems that may have been a little bit more centralized towards myself.
So what kind of opportunities have you had because of your poetry?
Poetry has given me a lot of opportunities. Actually, it's ever since grade 9 I have been writing consistently, and it's been giving me opportunities to go to Toronto on multiple occasions and be on news outlets, radio and TV. It's given me ways to make money, which was a very big concern of mine in previous years. And it's helped me support myself emotionally, financially, and in almost every way that I could think of.
Petrified, terrified, and sometimes depressed. My name is Austin. I'm 19 years old. But every now and then, I'm not. You're not strong enough. It's a normal day, rain or shine. Anyone who may have passed by has seen my big-ass smile and already have plans for the rest of the day. I'm hanging out with friends and hugging my girl. And I let my family down and have been ever since then. Papa, Tango, Sierra, Delta. A tap on my shoulder and I'm 12 years old again. I can't unclench my fist. I can't breathe. I keep hearing him yell at me. I can still feel that cold steel in my sleeve and I'm not even wearing a hoodie. What is happening to me? My eyes are watering. My arm is throbbing. I can see it all over again, and even now I can't stop it. You're not strong enough. I'm trying to focus, but I keep traveling back in time whenever I blink. The holes in the wall and broken glass run through my mind in what feels like the most literal sense. And I will never fucking forget my cousin telling me I was his favorite person as he wiped the blood out of my eyes just in order for me to see through the pain. You're not strong enough. I can hear those taunting words echoing in my brain. As each tear dribbles across my cheek, I sit in a hole in the wall where glass used to be, finding peace with every chilling inhale I breathe in. The stars look so beautiful. It's too bad they never work when I wish on every single one of them every single night. You're not strong enough. I saw and felt all the pain and I chose to run away. Then my therapist argues saying, is a war veteran running away when he comes home from battle? Therapy and PTSD are difficult things to mix, and most days, I can't handle it. Papa, Tango, Sierra, Delta. Papa, Tango, Sierra, Delta. Papa, Tango, Sierra, Delta. PTSD. Early on, I learned how to become a man well before I even learned how to be a child. Like a man drafted at 18, I was taken at 12. Then I just left my family in ruins because I wasn't strong enough. Now there are times when I'm afraid of my own shadow. Afraid of the man in the mirror because it brings me back to the shattered glass scattered on the floor from his last freakout. Maybe it's not so much the man in the mirror or the shadow that I cast, but the thought that statistically I will one day grow up to be him. Almost felt like nothing compared to his fist when I tested the durability of the glass against my wrist. He might not be listening to this had that glass been slightly sharper. If I had tried just slightly harder. 'Cause my mind is my enemy and my past is my armor, and both of them are fighting me when I know the fight's supposed to be over. My abuser just got out of jail again. Maybe it's time for me to pick up that glass again and leave. 'Cause I would rather let this be the end than to have to deal with the monster who he made me to be. Papa, Tango, Sierra, Delta. My name is Austin. My mind makes me feel like I'm 12 years old again when I'm actually 19. And I struggle with PTSD. Help me.
So, who is your audience?
I usually don't write for an audience too much. I usually write for myself, and then those things are apparent to other people, and that draws in an audience through the people who feel the same. So if I imagine my audience in my own eyes, then when I look out into the crowd, it'll be completely different, because the way people feel, I don't imagine it the same as the way I think the person might look.
You've experienced some pretty big changes recently. I mean, everybody has experienced the whole pandemic. But you've also recently become a father. So has this changed the way you create work? Are you creating work right now?
The pandemic has brought down my process a little bit, specifically that I'm focusing a little bit more on work and stuff like that, because money and stuff is a little bit tougher. And my process has been coming back into business now that I had my child, and he's kind of bringing up a lot of emotions within me. And I'm just trying to stay away from the blues that the pandemic brings and try not to fall into isolation too much.
How would you define community?
Community to me is being able to be safe, or at least feel content. And the best place I have to reference for community would probably be the Regina Word Up in the Creative City Center, just because of my ability to be open when I was younger, especially because I was closed off with my toque and hood on and hair over my face. And slowly I managed to cut it down a little bit. And even though I still come up with my toque on a lot, it's brought up a lot of my confidence for have such a strong community at the Regina Word Up.
So what are some things that you believe or value?
I believe in a person's own choices and moral compass. So if they want to do something or believe in something, then they can. And I believe that I'm not just here for work and paying bills and sitting at home, I believe that if I can inspire change or do anything, and I'm able to do it with my voice, then I should.
I am a man cloud. That's only a sentence a poet would say. Maybe it's better to say that I'm a man storm cloud. 'Cause I'm big, dark, scary, and only the right kinds of people won't say, "Oh shit," as I come their way. I swear I'm putting on my best version of my white face. Huge fake smile, fix my posture in a firm handshake. But it makes me feel guilty. 'Cause people make brown skin feel like a disease, and while many of my people can live with it happily, I just feel like there's something wrong with me. 'Cause I go by the code name Big Moses, and it's definitely not due to any religious devotion. It's 'cause I can part a crowd like the Red Sea without even the slightest motion. Walking through any crowd feels like I'm walking through the house of mirrors 'cause there's so many eyes staring back at me. Now, when I look into the mirrors, a clouded man is all that's seen.
In what way do you want your work to change the world?
I've wanted my work to change, I've wanted my work to have effects in different ways. I used to use my work as a way of helping kids who were under distress or suicidal, and I would write them pieces to help them get through things and text with them throughout the day. And throughout time, it's kind of grown into wanting a more wider kind of change and development with reserve issues and stuff like that because of mass suicides and stuff like that going on and a whole bunch of things like that. I feel like there's a broader audience that I can try and help than just individual one-on-one.
So what advice would you have for someone who wants to write poetry but maybe isn't sure how?
In order to write poetry, all you need to do is realize that there is communities and people who want to hear your voice and want to include you as long as you're including everyone else. And as long as you're open to that as long as you're open to everyone, then you can be as open as you want to be.
When did you begin to call yourself a spoken word artist? Do you?
I almost specifically describe myself as a spoken word artist, because many of my words have to be almost said by me specifically, and in person for you to feel the effect and the emotion, so it all has to be spoken directly. And I feel like it's very raw and harsh emotions that wouldn't jump off paper as well as it would when you're hearing it directly.
What is some writing or performance advice that you've learned?
Some tips on writing that I've learned is that the biggest thing that blocks you is yourself. So if you can get it down on a paper without you editing it in your own mind, then you can edit later, and then you'll actually be able to get it down on a piece of paper.
So just get it down.
Yeah, just write it down as quickly as it hits your head and then make the edits later, because you will erase everything in your mind before it ever gets down on a sheet. And that you don't ever have to show anyone. And that it can be yours, your art. You can say it sucks, you can say it's amazing, and either way no one has to see it. So you can do whatever you want with it and create as freely as you wish.
This has been Prairie People's Poetry with me, Cat Abenstein, as your host. Thanks to Austin the Noble Savage Ahenakew for his work, and thanks to you for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, and check out the other videos in our series. And be sure to let us know what you think. Thanks for supporting Prairie Poetry.